Hi, and welcome to our Fourth Universalist service video. My name is Ember Kelly, and I'm the Director of Religious Education here at the Fourth Universalist Society. Thanks so much for joining us. What follows are selections from our service on May 16th, 2021. This was a special service of our Music Sunday, where we take time to enjoy a little bit more music, but also to reflect on the meaning of music in our lives and in our congregation's life. In this video, you will hear the reading as well as the reflection. And following that, I hope that you'll join myself and Sean Mays, our director of music, for a lively discussion where we'll go deeper into our service theme together. You're invited to check out this in both video and audio form, this podcast. Each week, it's posted on our website, our Facebook, our YouTube, Instagram, and all of your favorite podcast streaming sites. In fact, we recently discovered that our application to have our podcast listed on Amazon was approved. And so if we understand right, you should be able to ask Alexa to play the Fourth U Dimension podcast. If you like what you see, we hope that you will give us a positive review. The likes, the subscribing, the comments, the shares, these all help to spread Fourth Universalist media further. Thank you again for watching, and we turn now to our reading.
This morning's poem is by the American poet Walt Whitman. That Music Always Round Me. It was published in the Whispers of Heavenly Death section in Walt Whitman's last edition of Leaves of Grass, 1891 to 1892. That music always round me, unceasing, unbeginning, yet long untaught, I did not hear. But now the chorus I hear, and I am elated. A tenor, strong, ascending, with power and health, with glad notes of daybreak I hear. A soprano, at intervals sailing buoyantly over the tops of immense waves. A transparent bass, shuddering lusciously under and through the universe. The triumphant tutti, the funeral wailings with sweet flutes and violins, all these I fill myself with. I hear not the volumes of sound merely. I am moved by the exquisite meanings. I listen to the different voices winding in and out, striving, contending with fiery vehemence to excel each other in emotion. I do not think the performers know themselves, but now I think I begin to know them.
A question to start us off. What is one of the first memories of music in your life? This is not a fact that I share all the time, but many people do not know that in his life prior to my arrival, my dad was a professional musician. This often comes as a shock to friends, especially those who know him, and especially when I sometimes share a song that he recorded professionally. He gave up his musical career shortly after I was born. He was a singer and a performer who had released 2 large albums, the second of which would come after I arrived and was, of course, never of Madonna-level fame, but would point him towards substantial achievements such as features in Billboard magazine and in posters throughout bus shelters and murals around our city at home in Toronto and across the States. An ongoing family joke these days is that even though his music career has long since passed over 3 decades, one can occasionally still see an album of his pop up somewhere online without permission, often somewhere halfway around the world, much to our surprise. One of the first memories I have of music was a song from his last album, which of course he used to sing around the house a great deal as I was a young child when he was fresh in the years of his post-musical life. One song on the album he used to play used to make me cry almost the moment I heard it. And not the sort of cry that you feel coming on slowly. This type of almost visceral, unexplained crying that comes from deeper within, from your inside out and shakes your body. He used to react in disbelief with my mother Why does he cry like this every time he hears this song? He would say. And he was right. I didn't know why as a child, particularly as I was old enough to understand the lyrics. And there was nothing sad about them at their essence. And yet, without fail, if it came on, there I was, a mess. I'm sure he was unable to listen to that song for years because of me. And as an adult and professional musician now, I can identify that I often have a similar experience with songs that happen to be in the same key as the song was, regardless of their obvious content. It's bizarre to think that something in one key over another, although so subtle, can shift our mood so drastically. I go back to this memory often because I think it reminds me of, and it speaks to the power of music in our existence. The way that sound is the essence of our existence and how it is by nature nothing more than vibration, and how this can move us in ways that we can't always describe or truly understand all of the time. We all know this. We all resonate with a time in our lives when we've heard a song or that song that for the life of us, we cannot shake off of our brains. And yet the combination of notes and the creation of those notes, as unique as they are, and always will be in one singular creation of a song or a piece, are still the same vibrations we feel all the time that make us human, physically as well, as a collective of vibrating, moving particles. The fullest scope and depth of the power of music is, I believe, truly indescribable. Think back to the Whitman for a moment. That music always round me, unceasing, unbeginning. I don't seek to hyperbolize often, but when you actually stop and think about it, I think that music is quite exceptional as far as human understanding is concerned. Where words fail, music speaks, as goes the quote from Hans Christian Andersen. As human beings, there are few other external sources in our existence that we can all equally connect with as much as we can with music. Now, that's not to say that human existence around the world all enjoys the same type of music. We all know that's far from the truth. But the principles of musical enjoyment, rhythm and harmony and pulse and dynamic depth and consonance, these are all things that we understand at a real close personal level. It lives within us. It's our ability to understand our external world. And it would be a shortcoming to not share at this point that all nature and audible noise is indeed a form of music as well. We carry our internal pulses and rhythms with us from the day we enter this earth until the day we leave it. Our heartbeat and our breath being the most present of which find natural increase and decrease as we pace through our lives. And our hearing comes early in our sense development and is supposedly the last thing to go when we die. Any of us who have sat with somebody at a hospital bed have often been told that while other senses might be diminished, they are often able to hear us and understand, even if they can't express that back. And music also has that ability to make us move between worlds of emotion in our own bodies. And culturally, we have notions around happy versus sad sounding music in our Western ideals, but similar combinations of notes also play the reverse effects in other cultures, still achieving the same emotional spectrum, but in a different rearrangement. I find that fascinating. And I think about all of these enormous considerations being the director of music here at Fourth U, and I consider how they factor into our role in worship. It is so often that I get the comments, which I love to hear, about how much a piece of music has meant to someone in our service, how much it has struck a note, if I may use the phrase, of a chord, or of remembrance, or of satisfaction, release, understanding. I'm sure it's of no surprise to any of us then that when I say I truly believe that music itself is a spiritual act. If you Google spiritual, you get the description of, quote, relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things, end quote. Well, I think that's music right there. Sure, we might feel it physically as well, but something also shifts from the physical to the metaphysical when we have that piece of music that clicks just the right way. I've had a long journey now of church work through numerous congregations, and I have always enjoyed that as my musical tastes have developed and grown, so has my spiritual side as well, always hand in hand. My love of new tastes of music has always coincided with a genuine curiosity to know more about life and what I am doing here, and moreover, how I can help to make music a transformative experience in people's lives. I've been fortunate to have numerous platforms to enable an access to music for others throughout my life so far, not limited to my church work, but also in my love and work as an educator, as many of you will know, and very presently in my work as a theater musician and music director, of which many of you also know I do external from Fourth U. I've wondered why I resonate so much with doing this, but I think it is for many of the same reasons. Funny enough, theater and church have many similarities. They both help us tell and understand stories about ourselves and one another for a deeper understanding of our world and how we function in it. And they both generally seek to do this through a vehicle of compassion and human connection. I very much believe that theater is a sacred experience. A good friend of mine in the industry calls the stage the altar, because of how important it is that the work we perform upon it reflect positively on humanity. And this is true for our church work as well. Now, consider all of this when you use music to execute these ideas. It's immensely powerful. For me, it is about music being the ultimate connector of human souls and understanding that draws me nearer and nearer to the work that I do, a sentiment which I believe truly that we all share here at Fourth U. Currently, I'm coming to you from Finland, a fact that might be a surprise to some of us on this call. I've been here for the last 2 months working as music supervisor on a locally produced new production of the musical Come From Away, which many of you may know by the Broadway version in New York, and of course, now touring around the world. Listening to and helping shape music in Finnish every day has been a fascinating experience in and of itself. But what it has reinforced to me is the power of music to connect us across literally worlds and oceans, to speak stories, to share kindness and empathy of humanity, as this story of the kindness of people following the days of 9/11 does so well, and to make us feel. We need that more than ever in our world right now. We need songs such as What Kind of World, as we heard earlier in our service, that inspire us to dream of better tomorrows. We need songs like What the World Needs Now to remind us of the power of love, and songs of the soul that encourage community, and Comfort Me, which we'll hear shortly, that teach us all of compassion for one another. Thinking back to my theater work here, presently, I'm amazed that I could sit in a theater and listen to these songs in a language I will never understand and still be moved to tears, still be connected to the spiritual and the otherworldly. That's the music I want to create. And that's the music that I want us to continue to foster in our musical life here at Fourth U. I know it means as much to you all as it does to me. And it's even an honor to bring that experience to our community. And that throughout all of our lives, no matter where our paths take us, the music we create together is a blessing because it will always unite us, even if we are apart. As in the words from our opening text, no nights are dark, no days are long, while in my heart there swells a song, and I can sing. Blessed be, and amen.
Sean, it's so great to get to sit down with you today.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Amber.
Yes, what a special service. I really appreciate you having a great book also for me to get to share for the Time for All Ages. It makes my life a little bit easier when I'm not necessarily the most versed in music books.
It's it's a book that we've had in the house for a while, and I don't know if classic is the right word, but it's certainly one of the books, children's books on music. So I really love it. And thank you for sharing it today.
Yes, it was just a really powerful service overall. I really appreciate the way that we got to, sit down and just enjoy music, but also think about music as a congregation. My from a I don't know if I can really call myself a newcomer anymore as I've approached the end of my first year,
I don't
but
think at this point.
but as a newer, as the newest hire, um, I feel like we are a congregation that enjoys music, that cares deeply about music. So it feels to me like it makes sense for us to have a special like music focused Sunday. What do you think? As someone who's been here for a little while longer, what is music to Fourth Universalist?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I would agree with you in that music is certainly a massive part of, the congregational life and the spiritual life of the church for sure. It's a truly, as in most congregations, I think it's a vehicle for exploring the themes that we look to explore every single week. That's the way we try and treat it, as well as that it coincides with the message and helps us to explore that message and think more deeply about it, and hopefully at some range of the music evokes a different range of emotions that can align, in different spots in the service. We're trying to build that arc of it throughout as we explore the theme and move through the theme emotionally as well. And I always hear that from people. People are always there isn't a week that goes by where I don't get a comment about thank you so much for this song or for the music. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate knowing that we have a community of music lovers, truly.
Well, and as an educator, I naturally maybe think about the different learning styles, but I think that applies when you think about music in a service, that some people, maybe a song is going to help touch them about a specific topic, when maybe listening to a reflection just won't.
Absolutely. I mean, we know, numerous types of learning styles, and certainly that, to be an auditory understander, is huge, and might, but also how that can translate differently, just hearing text versus hearing something tied to music. And that's scientific as well. We know our brains, that's why people will say sometimes, it's easier to memorize a song, lyrics to a song, than it is to just memorize a poem or something, because there's a rhythm that, our brain uses to try and shift music into, our brains think of music as a method of, speech as well.
Mhm.
That's the way it tries to process with it. So it's interesting to see that sometimes that will translate, and that, it's like, oh yeah, sometimes that's the way to communicate something, to get the message across, so to speak.
Right. Well, I know as somebody who has done two graduate school degrees that music was really what helped make it through all of that studying, all of that very intense amount of
Yeah.
studying is, in particular, let's see, the Rent soundtrack. I feel like,
Oh yeah.
as a as a young LGBT kid in conservative seminary, I have to have
That-
something that felt a little bit more progressive, or Sweeney Todd, for having songs about murder to mix
yeah.
in there, or Les Mis is of course always a good go-to for a good musical soundtrack.
All good
That's
selections,
that's
all good,
my study tunes.
right across the board right there, but all good stuff.
Whatever it takes to help with the studying. But
That's
I
it.
mean, it transforms the study experience. But like music, as you reflected on in the reflection, is like can be a very transformative experience. What are some ways that you've seen that in like your own life and in your own work?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about that all the time. I mean, I guess in different ways, sometimes it's the arc of someone's life. Sometimes it's a moment, of somebody realizing that they want to have this as a part of their life. Maybe it's not their entire life. I mean, I mentioned this, the service as well, is about being being an educator and being a theater musician and director and then a church musician for years. And they all help. All of, I think my role in all of them is helping people access music in a way that they can kind of take it back to their own life and say, right, what do I want to do with this? Right. And so when I was in a classroom, that not every student who studies with you is going to do music as their career. Of course, that's never going to happen. But overwhelmingly, what I always thought was interesting was how, this is one of the saddest things for why, when we have arts programs cut in school, because it's like, well, yes, we need science and we need, math, and we need all of those types of courses. But, certainly as far as the arts are concerned, you look at countries where arts education is mandatory, and you see a massive difference in terms of how those societies are structured, right? You see those societies are structured in a way that boils down to the principles of what the society believes in, right? If you teach an entire generation of people to engage with the arts, and that the arts, help us to access emotion and access a better existence for ourselves, then you create a society where you live that out, and not in just some sort of fluffy way, but you actually say, right, okay, well, how do we ensure everybody's got access to equal rights to healthcare, to financially, all of those things, right? And it sounds so massive in a weird way to say, oh, it all ties back to the arts. But again, it's in that balance of people's lives. So I always thought about that massively as a teacher. And I think it says the same thing, in theater, it's the same thing, because otherwise you just kind of have to say, well, why are you doing this then, right? You really have to believe in that. And I do believe that people can come to the theater, or they can listen to a piece of music, and that it can transform them, even if it doesn't change. They don't go off and they say, okay, I'm going to become a pianist now. That's not the point. Even if it means that somebody takes home a CD and they listen to it with their family, and that changes someone else's life, and it brings them joy or release in some way. That's then, for me, that's the job done, for sure.
So as you were sharing today, you revealed that, surprise, you've been streaming from Finland for quite some weeks.
That's right.
And acknowledging that we have a good handful of members who have maybe joined or just become much more active in the time since we've moved into the digital world in this last year. Would you want to give maybe an elevator pitch of who is Sean Mays? Who is the man behind our music? The man, the myth, the legend.
Oh my Lord. I wouldn't go that far, especially on record, but no, I think I like to think of myself as, where I can be a channel for people to access music and art, and to better themselves through it. I mean, on a very practical sort of, list approach to it. I work I work in theater as a music director, as a conductor. I work as an educator in arts. I work as of course, as a spiritual leader in our community. And all of those things, those are umbrella terms in the biggest form. In my work in theater and outside in music, I conduct, I arrange, I orchestrate, and I compose, and I'm glad for all of those different outlets, because again, they're just different ways that you can access it, and something you do in one realm might not reach people in another, but you might reach them in another. So for me, that's what it's about. And I think I find that for me, in terms of who I am, I like to think I'm a person that believes in the power of music to heal, and am a person that finds true satisfaction out of people being, having a positive experience. If I can work with people and make people feel good, I think that's the end of the, for me, that's it. It's and there's too many circumstances in life where that's not the case, right? We all have those moments where we've encountered somebody that we're like, oh, that wasn't as positive as I'd like it to be, and I don't love that. It sounds again a bit fluffy, but I do genuinely think that through your work, you can, we all have different ways of bringing our best to the world in our work, and that's me, and in whatever musical form I can find it in, for sure.
Well, for our rapid fire round, we'll give it a formal name here.
All right.
I want to keep the getting to know you questions coming. So we you shared obviously the story about your dad's music and about how meaningful that was to you. What is maybe, if you had to, what would be a memory that was cut for time in the reflection today? Another really high up there favorite musical memory.
Oh boy, I mean, there's so many, and I guess I'm lucky because I didn't. Everybody thinks, especially for me as a pianist, who playing piano. I didn't start when I was like 5. So, but I came to it later, but the difference of that was I always was surrounded by music as a child, right? As much as a result of my dad's involvement from it, but also, just coming from a family that loves music. My mom loved music. She sang all the time. Even sometimes when, we would jokingly beg her not to, in the most love possible. But everybody, we have lots of people in our family who, we've music at all the, family gatherings, the whole like. So it's always been a big part of life. I think some of like those early memories of music actually are some of the most fond and most hilarious. And just in terms of your development, I remember one time where we were really, when I was geez, I think 5, maybe 5 or maybe 6. And I remember we used to live outside of the city. I'm from Toronto, but we used to live outside the city in the country. And I remember once my parents had, still do, but at the time, and listened to it more, had a massive vinyl collection. And so as a kid, I would paw through them and put on records and listen to different stuff and become familiar with the music that they had grown up with, and that they had listened to recently and stuff. And that's how we listened to it at the time as well as a kid. And yeah, I mean, I remember once putting on an album, just the power of loving music so much, right? I remember once putting on an album and I played a song. I can remember this. I can remember the album too. It was an album, Evelyn King, for any listeners who might be, who might have a good soul streak. Evelyn Champagne King, and it was a tune of hers. And I played that song probably 200 times in a row. I just kept lifting the needle and replaying it. And I remember at one point, my mother literally stormed out of the house because she just could not take it. And it's one of the most, anyone, if you knew my mother, you would know that is the most uncharacteristic thing of her, where she just kind of said, I need some space, I need time, and she left. And I was like, what did I do as a young kid? Because I didn't realize. But I love thinking about that, because it was just, it's weird, right? We all do that. We get to moments and we just like love and listen to music repeatedly. So I think that's like a telling one for me. But just, tons of memories of my dad singing in the house growing up, listening to the radio, as a kid, trying to listen to a song, hearing a song come on and trying to figure out what the song was. Cause it was before, you had to try and you either had to listen through like 5 or 6 songs until they would say the song name, or you'd start at the beginning, and sometimes you'd try and listen to the same station for days at a time to try and catch a song over and over again, right? It was just, or you'd sing it to them, to parents or something and siblings, and be like, what was this, So those are kind of fun memories I have, certainly in terms of like the seeds being planted for what I didn't realize would become a life in music and moving in that direction.
Gosh, while the digital world makes it really easy to discover new music, there really is something about like the physical, like putting on a vinyl, or like I remember my dad putting in a new tape. In
Yes.
particular, he was a big Van Halen fan. This
Yes.
is 80s rock. When Eddie Van Halen died last year, I made sure to check in on him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and gosh, the um, REM's "Losing My Religion."
Oh,
He
yeah.
would
Yeah.
play that incessantly, and my mom would warn that it was going to lead me away from religion. Yet here I am, working at a church. So,
There's the path is long, right? We yeah, in and out.
um,
That's funny.
yes, but no, there was something about having those the
Yeah.
physical things that while I love being able to like play songs on streaming for my kids, like that I miss like being able to put in like a or go buy a CD from argue with my parents about whether I could get the
Yes.
uncensored version of a CD as a teenager. Um,
And it
the,
just, it's so true. And there's something about the physical. I mean, I still have so many of my CDs and tapes from, and like, there's something about that, the physicality of it too. And that we listened to music differently because,
mm,
like, I remember that, like, you got a tape. Like, I remember begging my parents for tape when I was a little older and being like, I really, like I just really want to tape from this band. And so you listened to that entire tape and you found the songs you liked, and then you'd rewind to them and you'd find those spots and play them out. But like you really got to know the works of of a band or an artist in a way that you don't have to engage like that anymore, right? And so I think it's rare, like finding artists that we love too. Love in for a lot of their music, I think, as well, not just one song, but no, we're like, I love a lot of their stuff. That's a tougher thing these days for sure.
well, I think that leads us well into our final two quick fire questions here.
All right, here we
Um,
go.
what so let's say you were stranded in Finland instead of on a desert island, with only a tape with only 5 songs on it. We'll keep the tape theme, and that was all the music that you could listen to. It was these 5 songs on this tape. What 5 songs would you pick right in this moment?
Goodness, that question would change day to day for sure. I think I could say, I mean, I would probably try and pick something genre wise through
Mm,
different genres, because I think that's how I would decide. I would try, and I think I would pick something. I think I'd pick some sort of piece of soul or funk music of its time. I would pick a classical piece, probably something symphonic. Um, I would pick, I think, an organ piece, because that's a
mm.
big part of my musical journey as well. Um, Probably something that's like rock, like probably a good rock tune. And then maybe a wild card for the last one and see where it took me. But that's a hard one. I can think of pieces that come to the top of my brain, but it's certainly I have go-tos, but I don't know. Honestly, there's just so much possibility, and I've always found that. Oh, and the last one would be a theater song for sure. Something from a piece of theater. It's such a it's like trying to choose which of your kids you love more. I think, I would imagine, I don't have kids, of course, but I would imagine that's very much what it's like.
Okay, well, I'll let you off the hook for giving just genres, because this one has to be a specific one for this question. Is there
Okay.
an artist recently that you've discovered like more recently, who's really just been like some new music that you've discovered recently that's been powerful for you or just
uh,
meaningful for you?
yeah, I mean, I've been spending, it's recent-ish. I've been spending a lot of time I've just finished a book that's going to publication at the end of the beginning of the fall. Oh, thank you. And it's exciting. It's a book about Black practitioners in theater and music who were working in Britain in the first half of the 20th century. Which when I started off on it was like, is this going to be a cool topic? And it's like by far one of the coolest things I've ever explored in my life. And I'm really, really happy and glad to have been in this realm to be able to kind of find out who these people are and be doing some of this recovery work. And it's 50 years of like awesome Black artistry, that spans literally 50 years of the music at the start of it. I've been listening to songs from 1903 that are like theater pieces that, are basically ragtime at this stage in the game, to moving through into the development more of blues and into jazz and swing and so like, and then to get to like 1950 and be like, oh wow, like listen how far its music has come, right? And so that's been a really cool thing for me lately, just like finding out who some of these people were and rediscovering a lot of their music that, again, even like a lot of it doesn't even exist in recording form these days. But the ones that do exist, or those moments have been really cool, because it's literally like stepping into a time machine, right? And I feel like that with music, when you listen to a piece of music, there's something about knowing that like so many ears, it's existed inside of so many ears and brains before it's reached yours, and so I find that really cool. And I find that in and of itself, it's kind of like it's a sacred experience, right? It's storytelling through generation, particularly if that story gets buried and then has to be refound, much in the way that a lot of these have been. So I think that's what I'd offer on that today.
Are there any names of artists from that survey that people could look up to give a listen to themselves?
Yeah, I mean, even just naming some of the people from the book in terms of people I've been exploring, like some names are more familiar. Some names that we have which are more familiar are like folks like Louis Armstrong and Cab Calloway, and it's been great to dive into some of that stuff. Some are a little bit less familiar. Early, or some of this early music is one conductor and composer who's pretty big American figure, but might not be very well known to many people, whose name was Will Marion Cook, was big in theater, also composed, much classical music as well, and was an accomplished artist of his own right at the top of the century. Different folks like Alberta Hunter and some of these folks who we're doing. Ken Johnson is another one I've spent a lot of time with. He was a big player in the UK swing build of UK swing music as well. So I think that those are a few of the names that I would leave us with. Always a start too.
It always helps to get a good start. So Sean, thank you so much for sitting down. This has been great to get to dive a little deeper into this with you.
Yeah, thanks, Ember. Likewise. Yeah, it's great. And I hope everybody enjoyed the service this morning. It was fun to put together.